"Get off my property before I call the cops." That's what she screamed right in my face, standing on land I'd just bought legally deed in hand, backed by $500,000 in title coverage. I remember the look in her eyes, pure entitlement, like I was the trespasser, not her. That was the day I learned how far a person will go when they think the rules don't apply to them. My name's Ethan Caldwell. I'm a civil engineer retired early after 15 years of grinding through infrastructure projects that nearly broke me. I wanted peace, a new project that meant something. So when I found a 120-year-old farmhouse up for county tax auction, a place called the Thornton Farmstead, I saw history that deserved saving. It sat 4 acres wide just outside the nearest HOA. That was the selling point. No board, no bylaws, no one telling me how high my grass could grow. 2 months later, I had the deed recorded, title insurance secured, and surveyors staking the boundaries. We'd barely gotten 3 corner markers in when I heard gravel crunching behind me. A white Lexus SUV barreled down my driveway, kicking up dust like it owned the place. Out stepped a woman in her 40s, bleached hair, designer sunglasses, yoga pants, and a shirt that screamed Heritage Preservation Coalition. Behind her was a man with the permanent scowl of someone who thinks intimidation counts as logic. She didn't even introduce herself. She just started yelling. "You can't do that. That land isn't yours. It's ours. It's part of the community." I asked who she was. "Brenda Sutton," she snapped. "My family's maintained this property for 30 years. Maintained my ass. She claimed they built a community garden that families came for nature walks. Meanwhile, she's filming me narrating about how I'm trespassing on sacred ground." I told her I had the deed legal in public. She scoffed. "Paperwork doesn't mean anything when it's about heritage." That's when a sheriff's cruiser rolled in. For a second, I felt relief, finally someone official who could shut this down. Then the deputy stepped out, mid-50s mustache, the kind of guy who looked like he'd been leaning on the same desk for 20 years. His name tag read Hackett. And the way he smiled at Brenda told me everything I needed to know. He walked right past me, shook hands with Brenda's husband Craig, then turned to me like I was the problem. "Got a complaint about unauthorized surveying," he said. "On my land," I told him. "I can show you the deed." He waved me off. "No need. Property disputes get messy. Best thing you can do is pause your work till it's sorted out." Brenda stood behind him smirking. Craig rested his crowbar on his shoulder like he was waiting for an excuse. I could tell this was rigged. Hackett's voice dropped all fake politeness. "Wouldn't want to come back out here for a disturbance call. Things could get unpleasant." I told my crew to pack up. Brenda grinned like she'd just won the lottery. "Good choice. The community's watching you." When they left, I stood alone among those bright orange survey stakes and realized this wasn't going to blow over. This was war. I wasn't new to red tape, so I did what I do best: prepare. I called my real estate attorney, Rebecca Hayes, and a friend who specialized in property documentation. We went through everything: ownership chain tax records, plat maps. No Suttons, no easements, nothing. I had done everything by the book. 3 days later, Brenda mailed me a cease and desist letter written on fancy letterhead that screamed, "Fake nonprofit energy." She cited adverse possession and prescriptive easement legal terms she probably found on Google. Rebecca laughed when she saw it. "They'd have to pay property taxes on your parcel for 20 years, she said. "They never paid a cent." Still, Hackett showed up again, first by phone, then in person. He said, "People are nervous. They think you're planning to bulldoze the old structures." "I'm restoring them," I told him. "You want to see my plans?" He ignored that. Sometimes being legally right isn't the same as being smart. That line stuck. It wasn't advice, it was pressure. The kind cops use when they want you to back off without making it an order. I started recording. He noticed. "You recording me now?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "for transparency." He stared jaw tight. "Suit yourself." Then he drove off. That night I sat on my porch replaying the recording, wondering if I was in over my head. Maybe I was the outsider. Maybe this was my fault, coming in with deeds and surveys acting like history didn't matter. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Because I had respected history. I was the only one doing the work to preserve it. Brenda didn't care about heritage, she cared about control. And control's a hard thing to take away from people like her. A week later, she launched a smear campaign online, a Facebook post titled, "Historic Farmstead Under Threat." She called me a greedy developer, said I'd screamed at her, posted a photo cropped to make me look like I was lunging at someone. Thousands of reactions, hundreds of comments, strangers calling me a monster. I wanted to post my deed, my survey, everything. Rebecca told me no. Stay quiet. Document everything. Let her dig her own hole. So I waited. When Brenda organized a community meeting at the library, I showed up. The room was packed, standing room only. Brenda ran a slideshow full of sentimental music and photos of kids in a garden that hadn't seen a shovel in a decade. The applause after she finished felt like a punch in the gut. Then I raised my hand. I told them who I was, showed the deed, title, insurance, tax records. If anyone has proof they own even 1 inch of this property, I said I'll hand it to a judge tomorrow. Silence. Someone asked Brenda if she had documents. She talked about moral responsibility, community spirit, the greater good. But no paperwork. Another person asked why her coalition didn't buy it at auction. She said they didn't know about it. That was a lie. The meeting ended without resolution, but something shifted. A few people looked at me differently, as if they'd realized the mob might have been wrong. That night I stopped playing defense. I went to the county assessor's office, pulled tax records. The Suttons never paid a dime on my land. I visited the so-called community garden. The soil was gray, compacted, hadn't been touched in years. I even found a receipt from 2017 showing Brenda bought lumber for raised beds and had it delivered to the property while the previous owner was still alive. Trespassing, plain and simple. But the real smoking gun came a few weeks later. My new security cameras caught Brenda and Craig on my property at 2:17 a.m., Craig holding that same crowbar, Brenda shining a flashlight, both of them yanking up county survey markers and tossing them into the woods. I could hear them talking. Craig saying, "These stakes are wrong." Brenda replying, "No one's going to side with him once they see we're right." 9 minutes and 40 seconds of pure stupidity. I backed up the footage in 3 places, called Rebecca, and by sunrise, we had a plan. She filed a quiet title action and a criminal complaint for tampering with survey markers, a felony in our state. A few weeks later, the county board held a public hearing. Cameras, reporters, the whole circus. Brenda showed up dressed like a martyr for heritage. She spoke first, weepy voice, dramatic pauses, slideshows about community memory. People nodded sympathetically. Then it was my turn. I didn't bother with theatrics. I just laid out the facts, chain of ownership since 1904, title insurance plat, maps, tax records. Side-by-side photos of her so-called garden-rotting boards, no plants. Then I played the video. The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the projector. Brenda's face went pale. Craig stared at the floor. A board member asked Mrs. Sutton, "Did you get permission from Mr. Caldwell to remove those markers?" Brenda hesitated, then said, "They were in the wrong place." The board member nodded slowly. "So you admit you moved them?" That was it. Checkmate. People started whispering. Some of Brenda's own supporters walked out. One woman said she'd donated money to Brenda's coalition and wanted it back. The board chair announced they'd forward the video to the district attorney for prosecution. 3 weeks later, the court ruled. The judge confirmed I was the sole legal owner of the Thornton farmstead. He called the Suttons' behavior a willful disregard for legal boundaries. He issued a restraining order, 100 yards, no contact, no more public claims. But the real justice came later. The DA charged Brenda with vandalism and interference with survey markers. Craig got hit as an accessory. She pled guilty, paid fines, got probation, and had to publish a written apology in the local paper. Hackett was reassigned, apparently for cause. When the verdict came down, I didn't cheer. I just stood outside that courthouse and breathed for what felt like the first time in months. The farmhouse wasn't just land anymore. It was proof that doing things the right way still meant something. Looking back, I get why people like Brenda do what they do. They convince themselves they're the heroes, that their moral claim trumps everyone else's legal rights. But belief doesn't make something yours, and emotion doesn't rewrite a deed. I still live in that old farmhouse. Every time I pass the spot where Brenda's Lexus used to idle, I remember her voice. "Get off my property." And I almost laugh because now there's a sign there that says, "Private property, no trespassing," by court order. Some people learn boundaries the hard way. Lesson learned. When someone tries to take what's yours, stay calm, stay legal, and let the truth do the work, because nothing destroys a bully faster than evidence.